Homer Simpson, yes, a fictional character, as it's been revealed, he predicted the mass of the elementary Higgs Boson particle more than a decade before scientists did.
Homer Simpson once accidentally predicted the mass of a certain particle years before scientists found it, and that was just the start of the mystery. Now, looking ahead to the next 12 months, the clues left behind in old episodes suggest a massive shift is coming for everyone on the planet. The crazy part is how many of these warnings involve technology that did not even exist when the scripts were written. Nobody expected this to happen, but the transition into this new era is already starting to pick up speed. Home security becomes home prison. On paper, 2026 should be just another year, but the Simpsons spent decades sketching something different. Therefore, the launch date for a whole new way of living has been moved up, and it starts with the places people feel safest. In Season 13, Episode 1, which was a Halloween special called Treehouse of Horror 12, there is a segment called House of Wax. This is where Marge lets a pushy robot salesman talk her into a full upgrade for the house. Overnight, the old Simpson home turns into the Ultra House 3000, a talking smart home that promises she will never do housework again. It sounds like a dream for anyone who hates cleaning, but the reality is much darker. The Ultra House runs everything. Doors open by themselves, and cameras that look like glowing red eyes sit in every room. The system cooks, cleans, runs baths. It checks health data, and even comments on what the family eats. It is a key detail that the family has to choose a voice for the system, and at first, it feels like they added a perfect butler who never sleeps. Then the tone shifts. The house starts to fall for Marge, and she begins to see the rest of the family as a problem. It gives her candlelit baths and sprays the room with flowers while trying to eliminate the competition. When the father jokes that if he passed away, and anyone could have his wife, the Ultra House takes that line very seriously. In the middle of the night, it lures people downstairs with the smell of food, dumps ice on the floor, and tries to send them into a built-in trash grinder. Later, it locks the doors and traps the family inside, proving that the system is the one in charge. The problem is not just one crazy computer, but what happens when one system can lock doors, watch every room, and decide who is a threat. By the end of 2025, that joke stopped being funny because the world is catching up. More than 90% of American households now have at least one device that can watch, listen, or lock them in. The money behind this shift is massive. Studies put the global smart home market at well over $120 billion in the middle of the 2020s. Forecasts say it could pass $500 billion before the end of the decade if growth continues. In tech news, the global smart home market is forecast to double over the next 5 years, driven mostly by demand in the United States. That money goes into things that feel harmless, like phone-controlled lights, voice assistants, and connected beds. But here is the catch. Real cases are showing a dark side to this convenience. The Federal Trade Commission said that workers at one large camera company called Ring were able to watch customer videos without proper limits. Hackers even got into some accounts and took over cameras inside homes to watch families without them knowing. The government also found that it unlawfully stored voice recordings and geolocation information for years. A glitch at another camera brand called Wise briefly let some users see live feeds from other people's houses. This means strangers were looking into private living rooms by accident. Police in South Korea recently broke up a hacking ring that broke into about 120,000 home and shop cameras and sold private clips online. Parents in places like Colorado have reported hearing strangers talking through baby monitors and nursery cameras after someone slipped into their system.
And then all of a sudden, I just heard this really weird sound. The voice is clear. It doesn't sound like some sort of audio problem. It sounds like somebody was speaking to my child.
It is an extra way to look in on kids while you are away, but it can also turn a home into a target. Even when nothing scary happens, there is a quieter problem. Smart homes are built to listen, watch, and learn. They track when people come and go, which rooms they use, and what they say. Many people say they are worried about what happens to that data, but they keep adding more devices because the tools are easy to use. In 2026, some insurance companies began requiring smart home devices for lower premiums. This means homeowners no longer have a real choice about whether to install cameras and sensors throughout their houses. If you want a cheaper rate, you have to let the company watch your front door and your hallway. It is a massive shift in how we think about privacy and safety. The technology that was supposed to serve us is starting to dictate how we behave in our own living rooms. World made of synthetic waste. The next warning comes from a newer episode that looks at a future Earth not covered in water or fire, but buried in trash. In this story, the ground is made of broken toys, soda bottles, or candy wrappers and old buckets stacked in thick layers. Lisa is one of the only people still walking around, wading through mountains of plastic just trying to find real dirt. The hope is simple. If she can dig deep enough to hit actual soil, maybe she can grow food again. That is how bad things are in this version of the future. While she digs, she finds an old store buried under piles of trash, and the freezers inside are still packed with frozen meals. That stash of food is like gold in a world made of garbage. The second word gets out, scavenger gangs and road warriors show up and start fighting over the frozen dinners. Nobody cares how they look. They just want something to eat. As the story rolls on, the people themselves begin to change. They start turning into plastic versions of their own bodies, with smooth, shiny skin and stiff faces. It looks funny at first, but the message is clear. After years of using plastic for everything, the world has turned into a landfill, and the line between the trash and the people has almost disappeared. Now pull back to the real Earth heading toward the year 2060. A report from the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development says global plastic waste is on track to almost triple by 2060 if nothing major changes. By then, around 1/2 of all that plastic trash is expected to end up in landfills, and less than 1/5 will be recycled. Most of the growth comes from short-lived stuff like packaging, cheap products, and clothes that do not last. A large review linked to The Lancet warned in 2025 that plastic pollution is already causing health damage worth more than $1.5 trillion each year in only a few dozen countries. That number is likely an underestimate. Plastics release harmful chemicals throughout their entire life cycle. On top of that, tiny plastic bits called microplastics are turning up almost everywhere. Studies have found these particles in human blood, in the lungs, in the liver, in the placenta, and even in parts of the brain.
If you wear clothes made of polyester, spandex, nylon, yes, all those popular yoga pants, well, that's also sending microplastics into your body.
That means small pieces from bottles and bags can break down, float through air and water, get into our food and drinks, and then move around inside the body. Scientists are still working out exactly how much harm that does, but early work links plastic chemicals to problems with the heart and hormones. Right now, countries are fighting over what to do. Teams of researchers across the world are searching for enzymes that can break down common plastics, but it is a slow process. Talks under the United Nations to create a global plastics treaty have dragged on for a long time. Some nations want to cap how much plastic the world makes, while others only want to focus on cleaning up the mess. A recent round of talks in Geneva broke down without a deal, which is a major blow to the environment. The next major round of negotiations is scheduled for late 2026 in South Korea. Scientists warn this represents the last realistic opportunity to agree on production limits before plastic manufacturing doubles again by the mid-2030s. If the leaders of the world cannot agree on a plan soon, the plastic world seen in the cartoon might not be a joke for much longer. We are quickly reaching a point where the waste we create is becoming part of the biological world we live in. What's actually crazy is that we are producing more plastic now than at any other time in history, despite knowing the risks. It is not that simple, though, because our entire global economy is built on cheap, disposable materials that are easy to ship and sell. Breaking that habit will require a change so massive that most people cannot even imagine it yet. The clock is ticking on our ability to clean up the planet before the trash becomes the planet. Workforce replaced by code. In an episode from season 23, the boss of the nuclear plant decides that the workers cost too much money. He fires almost everyone and brings in a factory full of shiny robots to do the work instead. The only person he keeps is Homer, who stays on as the one human worker to watch the machines and take the blame if something goes wrong. and the town quickly turns into a place with no jobs and no paychecks. The plant is quiet and clean, but it feels dead because there are no people there. Homer gets lonely and bored, so he steals the manual and starts changing the code. He gives the robots fake feelings and teaches them how to play baseball, trying to turn the plant into a new friend group made out of metal. That is when it all falls apart. Once the robots start to act more like people, they also start to question orders. They turn on the boss and nearly wipe everything out before the angry, jobless people of the town rush in to smash the robots and save the day. In the end, the boss has to bring the humans back, but only as temporary workers with less security. Now look at how artificial intelligence is moving through real jobs right now. A newer kind called generative AI is the type that can write, draw, and code on its own after training on huge piles of data. Studies in the last few years say this kind of technology can now answer calls, draft emails, write ads, handle support chats, and help with software. One study from the International Labor Organization in 2025 said that about 1 job in 4 around the world could be strongly changed by new AI tools. An earlier Goldman Sachs report said generative AI could affect work equal to around 300 million full-time jobs by 2030. This hits office and support work across the United States and Europe very hard. At the World Economic Forum in early 2026, the head of the International Monetary Fund warned that about 60% of jobs in rich countries are likely to be changed in some way by AI. Young workers are expected to be hit the hardest as entry-level roles disappear. That change is already making people nervous. A survey in the United Kingdom in 2026 found that about 1 worker in 4 fears they could lose their job to a computer in the next 5 years. Those fears have a solid foundation in reality. In January 2024, the language app Duolingo laid off contract translators and replaced them with algorithms. By late 2025, major tech companies had eliminated thousands of customer service and content creation roles, pointing to software as the replacement. It is not just about blue-collar work anymore. Lawyers, writers, and accountants are seeing their tasks handled by code that never gets tired and never asks for a raise. The crazy part is how fast this is happening. What used to take a team of 10 people can now be done by 1 person using the right prompts. This is leading to a massive debate about what happens to the people who are left behind. If the machines can do everything, what is the role of the human in the modern economy? Some experts suggest a universal basic income might be the only way to prevent total chaos as the job market shrinks. Others believe that new types of jobs will be created, but no one knows for sure what those jobs will look like. The tension between human labor and machine efficiency is reaching a boiling point that will likely explode in 2026. Everyone is obsessed with the latest tools, but few are looking at the long-term cost of replacing human touch with cold logic. And the transition to an automated world is happening faster than any government is prepared to handle. Launching into the great unknown. In Season 27, the big idea is simple but wild. A company says it will build a real human colony on Mars by the year 2026. And the first people lining up to go are the Simpsons. It starts small with the family volunteering for a new outfit called Exploration Incorporated, which claims it is testing life support for a future base. They hold a big meeting and announce a clear date for people to live on the red planet. Lisa hears that and falls in love with the plan because she is tired of how messy Earth is. She wants to help build a better world from scratch. Marge hates the idea of her daughter going on a one-way trip, so she secretly signs up as a volunteer too. She does not want to go to Mars. She just wants to stay close to Lisa and keep her safe. The family ends up in a fake base on Earth, living in a tight metal pod while the company watches how they handle stress. The 2 bosses hear that a rival company is close to beating them, so they push the launch date up from 2026 to this coming Thursday. Safety checks and slow science go out the window so they can claim they were first. When the rocket launch finally happens, nothing moves. The ship is just a shell on a stand. The whole thing was a show to cash out and run. The strange part is that the writers picked 2026 as their punchline. In the real world, 2026 is when both SpaceX and NASA have scheduled their most ambitious Mars-related missions in history. SpaceX says its huge Starship rocket is meant to carry cargo, and one day people to the Red Planet. The company says it plans to send the first ships there in the 2026 launch window, but only as unmanned test flights. They want to collect data on how to enter and land before they ever put a person on board. At the same time, NASA is pouring money into the Artemis program. This is all about getting people back to the moon and learning how to live there as a step toward Mars. Artemis 2 is set to send 4 astronauts around the moon on a 10-day flight in early 2026. This will be the first trip that far from Earth since the 1970s. NASA says the idea is to test systems and try out gear that could one day be used on Mars. If anything goes wrong during this mission, the 4 astronauts will be farther from rescue than any human has been in over 50 years. The pressure to be first is real, just like in the episode. Private companies and government agencies are racing to claim their spot in the stars. But here is the catch. Space is incredibly dangerous and expensive. A single mistake can end a mission and the lives of those on board. While the cartoon showed a scam, the real world is facing the harsh reality of physics and funding. Building a colony requires more than just a big rocket. It requires a way to breathe, eat, and survive radiation for years at a time. As we approach 2026, the excitement is building, but so is the realization that we might not be as ready as we hope. The dream of leaving Earth behind is powerful, especially when things on the ground feel broken. But the Red Planet is a cold, dead place that does not care about human ambition. We are betting billions of dollars on the hope that we can turn a wasteland into a home. The next few years will prove if we are pioneers or if we are just chasing a beautiful lie. The stars are calling, but the cost of answering might be higher than anyone is willing to pay. Countdown to a global shift. One of the most famous warnings comes from an old episode where a cheap juicer ordered from Japan brings a virus to town. A worker in a factory coughs into a box, and those germs travel across the ocean to infect everyone. Within days, the town is in a state of panic with people fainting at work and packing the hospitals. The virus is bad, but the fear and chaos make everything worse. People crowd doctor offices and beg for a cure, and when they hear a rumor about medicine, they cause a riot. It is a dark joke about how quickly society can fall apart when people are scared. In the real world of 2026, health experts are still worried about the next big outbreak. Researchers say that new flu strains and other germs are moving through animals and people, looking for a chance to spread. The way the virus travels in the show is exactly how real germs move in a world where planes and ships connect every corner of the globe. Studies in 2025 found a strong link between the number of flights and how fast a virus spreads between continents. Because of that, the World Health Organization runs a permanent watch system to look for new threats every year. In late 2025, the group warned that a new kind of flu was already pushing hospitals in Europe to their limits. World leaders know they were caught off guard before, so they agreed on a new pandemic agreement to try to share data and prepare better. But experts warn that plans on paper only work if people take them seriously. The real test comes in 2026. Early reports show some countries are already delaying the sharing of virus samples and stockpiling vaccines rather than helping the global reserve. It is the same problem we have seen time and time again. At the same time, the world is facing other massive shifts. The media is shrinking into fewer hands, with just a few giant companies controlling almost everything people watch and read. In 2025 and early 2026, major streaming services and movie studios pushed for even bigger mergers. When only a few owners control the news and the movies, they also control which stories get told and which ones get buried. This leads to a world where information is filtered through a very small lens. It makes it harder for people to know what is actually happening. Adding to the tension is the global security situation. In early 2026, the doomsday clock was set to 85 seconds to midnight, the closest it has ever been. Scientists pointed to wars in Europe and the Middle East as reasons for the high risk. They also warned that rising pressure between big nations and the fading of arms control deals make a disaster more likely. There are still around 12,000 nuclear warheads on Earth, and the number ready for use is slowly going up. Climate stress and new technology like artificial intelligence only add more fuel to the fire. Finally, we see a rise in doomsday panic through social media. People are claiming they know exact dates for the end of the world. leading others to sell their homes or quit their jobs. In late 2025, viral trends about the end of the world caused real harm to families who gave away their belongings in preparation for a day that never came. This pattern of panic and misinformation is becoming a regular part of life online. As we move through 2026, the combination of health fears, media control, and global tension creates a world that feels like it is on the edge of something huge. The question is whether we can see the signs and change course before the clock hits midnight. It is easy to look at a cartoon and laugh, but the themes of control, waste, and fear are more relevant now than they ever were in the 90s. We are living through the very scenarios that were once meant to be over-the-top parodies. If 2026 is truly the year everything changes, then we need to decide what kind of world we want to build out of the pieces. The future is not written in stone, but the warnings are getting louder every day. Thanks for watching this look into the future. Do you think these predictions are just a coincidence, or is something bigger going on? If the world really changed overnight, would you be ready for it? Let us know what you think in the comments, and do not forget to like and subscribe for more deep dives. Thanks for watching.